excited.
Me too. It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Of course.
So, this is a question I've been wanting to put to rest, but it's just too pervasive. 5 years ago, this pandemic was raging. So many things were getting thrown into disarray. Lots of things were unknown. How did you ultimately survive the global pandemic, and how has it reverberated into what you do today in 2025?
Wow. So COVID changed everything when
Yeah.
it comes to marketing, when it comes to communications, and especially when it comes to event planning. And so in my full-time capacity, I'm the director of marketing and communications at America's Future. We're the largest talent accelerator for people in the center right to grow their network, expand their skills, and to maybe level up either in their community or in their professional lives, right? And so about 5 years ago, we had this big problem where we said, oh my gosh, well, there's a fire truck going by. You can
Oh,
always edit that out.
yeah, it's all
Um,
good.
that's the difficult part about living right next to the police station and then the fire station.
Yep.
There's always something going on. So my toddlers are always like, "What is it?"
Yeah.
Looking out the window. Um, but that's the tough part about going from doing events across the country to, okay, now we got to go virtual. And then I think what a lot of folks realized is when they made that pivot from the marketing space is that, oh my gosh, people are getting zoomed out. After about a year, people didn't want to be on Zoom anymore. So, how do you make your event compelling enough and interesting enough to get people coming back for more? And so, I'm very thankful that we kind of opened back up, so to speak, in 2021. 2022, I think things were pretty much back to normal. But it was really tough. And it was getting creative and saying, hey, how can we get people involved? How can we get them, kind of enticed enough that they're going to want to jump on Zoom, maybe after a long day of working remote where they're already on Zoom all day long anyway, right? So we started a bunch of virtual trivia competitions
Yeah.
that got people so stoked. We're doing them 5 years later, Joe, because
Wow.
people want them. We're doing things like offering door prizes. Like, hey, if you get on Zoom, the first 40 people who register get a $5 Starbucks gift card. And then towards the end, we'll enter you in a drawing for a $100 Amazon gift card, right? Young professionals are always going to be enticed by two things: coffee and Amazon is
Yep.
what I found, right? So that's one of the things that we did at America's Future to pivot. It was really tough, but at the same time, that's what's so wonderful about the community that we've cultivated is that people are entrepreneurial and they understand. I mean, it's a global pandemic. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm always amazed at how many people say, and I know that it was a global pandemic, there was a lot of woe going on, but I'm amazed at how much, from especially kind of like a business and a personal standpoint, people really grabbed onto this time period and things accelerated. Things accelerated in a positive way.
Well, and I think that's one of the things about the human spirit, right? Like anytime you see these tragedies, I always, tragedies around the world, pandemics, and then as like a millennial, we always say like, what's the number one news story that impacted you is always going to be 9/11, right? Like always will be 9/11. And one of the things that comes around that I see on the internet around September 11th is that quote that says, "Look for the helpers."
Yeah.
Like, look for the helpers. Those are going to be the people that are making a difference. And I think that's what we kind of saw through COVID was that there were people out there that were delivering groceries for elderly neighbors or people who were homebound. There were people who were getting together, maybe even if it's not through an organization like America's Future, they were doing things, socially distanced baptisms. We saw priests that were using squirt guns on kids, right? Like there was a way to kind of see through it, but I think that's what's so wonderful about the human experience is that we adapt and we find ways to kind of move on and get through it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here as a species,
Yeah.
right?
Certainly. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. And to do that, kids always get the truth out of us somehow. I'm going to
Oh
put you in
yeah.
front of a bunch of 12-year-olds, career day. The kid in the back of the room is like, hey, what do you do for a living? What's your answer?
I I put butts in seats.
Okay.
Is what I tell people, is that I get people to events, whether they are in person, whether they are virtual. I get people to sign up for fellowships for some of our different classes. We today are actually launching a book publishing fellowship out in Washington, D.C. It's a 5-week course taught by Matt Purple, who's one of our fantastic fellowship managers. He's going to teach people how to get their book published. We've got a grassroots organizing fellowship. If you want to start a project or a nonprofit in your community, we've got that option for you. So at the end of the day, it's getting butts in seats and it's making these events, these fellowships, and the ideas of freedom enticing enough that folks want to sign up and join our community.
So what did you want to be at 12 years old? What was your job that you were wanting to get?
This is so silly, but I wanted to be a plastic surgeon.
Okay.
I was 12 years old, but that's around the time. I mean, we go back to, hey, millennial, you remember in like the early 2000s, everybody was getting Botox
Uh-huh.
and it looked terrible. It wasn't like the, natural Botox that we have now or
Yeah.
any of those neurotoxins. And so I remember sitting there thinking, like looking at people and looking how frozen they were, thinking, oh, I got to help them.
Yeah.
Like I got to help them somehow. I'm glad medical school did not pan out because the world of marketing and media and communications was always very enticing to me and always very exciting. And just communicating and telling stories. Obviously, I'm a big reader, big book lover, and I'm just really glad that I didn't follow what 12-year-old Chloe wanted to do.
So what's your favorite book? What was your favorite book growing up? What opened the door for you?
Oh man. Favorite book as a kid, again, it was that millennial Harry Potter series. I
Yeah.
mean, who didn't, not like Harry Potter? Another one that I always kind of go back to, and it's a little dark, but Arthur Miller's The Crucible.
Oh
I was
yeah.
in that play when I was like 10 years old. I was Betty Paris. And it wasn't until I got about to high school when you talk about McCarthyism, the Red Scare of the 1950s and all of Hollywood, they're turning into communists and they're going to take over America. Very like not adult themes, but very like advanced kind of themes in that book. And it wasn't until I got to like high school and college that I thought, wow, what were my parents doing putting me in this like very like forward thinking play, right? And so that's just a book that I read again like once a year. And then, of course, Daniel Day-Lewis in the movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I think The Crucible came out in like either 96 or 97, but he starred opposite of Winona Ryder.
Yeah.
And just fantastic performance. And Daniel Day-Lewis only does a movie every like 5 years, and that year he was nominated for an Oscar for playing John Proctor. Didn't win. I think he was robbed, but I was also only like 4 or 5 at the time, so I couldn't,
Yeah.
petition the Academy.
Well, yeah, and I think he retired, didn't he? Isn't he officially retired now?
Yeah, which is too bad. I
Yeah.
feel like we can always get like a little bit more out of them, but at the same time, There Will Be Blood, I think, is still one of like the top like regarded as the most famous or most the best movie of all time, something like
Yeah.
that.
I
That performance is stunning.
yeah, I remember My Left Foot was when he really broke in, and that was the beginning for him. That's wild. So, excuse me. So let me ask you this. How did you get here? Take me back to your childhood. What were these foundational elements of you wanting to go into medical school, to eventually get into marketing, to be an entrepreneur, to get these seats filled? What was that drive? What were these seeds that were planted?
So I grew up and still am, obviously. I'm Greek American, grew up in a Greek American household. And my grandparents had a very big hand in helping raise us, multi-generational family. And one of the things that always kind of stuck out with me, if you've ever seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the mom is always like, hey, you need to eat because growing up I didn't have food. And that's like always kind of the joke with that generation of Greeks or Greek Americans or, insert any ethnicity is that we didn't have food. We came to this country to give you a better life, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got into about middle school, high school, I realized that, oh, Yaya and Papa moved over here because Nazis invaded their villages and burned everything down. And they really grew up not having food. Um, and so I was always a curious kid, always very inquisitive, always wanted to learn more about where we came from. Why did you move, Yaya, from Greece to the United States when you were only 14 years old? Like, who does that, right? Gets on a ship and says, nope, I'm leaving, I'm out. And so I realized that, wow, things must have been really bad in order for you to want to make that change and move to the United States. Always interested in media, always interested in storytelling, and always interested in helping people. Greeks are very much known for, and most Mediterranean folks are known for philomoto, which means like the honor of good, right?
Yeah.
So you give the shirt off of your back for someone, even if they can't help you in return. That's just like the Greek way of being. And so growing up, being very involved in community events, volunteering, Girl Scouts, like, typical American school life, right? I realized that, gosh, if I want to make sure that socialism and communism, like the terrible things that my grandparents escaped Greece for, don't creep into my own backyard. I have to be the good, and I have to help and be a helper, right? It goes back to look to the people who are helping, or look for the helpers. And so I've had a really strange career. Started on political campaigns, really liked them until I realized that I was working like 100-hour weeks. And I said, nope, I'm good. Need to rest a little bit in my 30s now, right? And so that's how I got into the nonprofit space through America's Future, through organizing in my community, and just trying to get like minded folks together so that we can make our community better.
Who's your favorite storyteller?
Who's my favorite storyteller? Oh man, that's a good question. And I hate it when people say, "Oh, that's a good question," because it just gives them more
Right.
time to think. I would say that, man, my grandparents were always really good storytellers, and they would constantly tell us stories about, oh, well, when I was growing up, my great grandfather, he owned a candy store, like a convenience store in Greece, and my yaya would always talk about how exciting it would be whenever they would get chocolate. And so that was like a delicacy, right? Like you just didn't really get it very often. And so I just always loved hearing those stories about, okay, what was it like growing up before World War II, right? What was it like growing up? What was it like when my dad and his brothers were little in the 60s and 70s? Just, I think folks who come from the old country are always so good at coming up with, okay, this is the story, and here's the reason why you shouldn't do that thing.
Yeah.
And I think you see that in a lot of American pop culture. It's always, the old grandpa in the back that's telling kids, like, when I was your age, we didn't do X, Y, and Z. And I think that's a big part of oral storytelling too. Like, we talk about the Midwest. We talk about, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but when you talk about like Appalachia hillbillies that live out in the hills or out in the mountains, one of the ways that they keep their culture alive is through oral storytelling.
Yeah.
And that's the same in the Baltic states. It's the same over in the Mediterranean as well.
Absolutely. So who's been a hero? Who's been that inspirational force for you to find your footing, to find your way, and to become who you are?
Well, I talk a lot about my grandparents, but I mean, man, when you come over with nothing and try to make something, my our first ancestor that came from Greece was my Papuli Antoni in 1912. This was after the Titanic sank. And again, this is one of those oral history type stories that we always love to hear. But when they were passing from Greece on the ship to where the Titanic sank, the conductor, the captain, or whoever it is that manages a boat, specifically pointed out to everybody, "Oh yeah, that's where the Titanic sank, right over there, and all over to your left. We're going to keep going." But when he came to the United States, he wanted to go from New York to Chicago, didn't have enough money to get there. And so he stopped in a little place called Elkhart, Indiana, which is the RV capital of the world. It's about 110 miles east of Chicago, and that's how my family ended up there,
Wow.
and has really just been there ever since. Now I'm in the big city of Indianapolis, and so to me, it's like, hey, if you are 14, 15 years old and say, I want a better life for myself, that's really compelling. So the fact that they've been able to live the American dream is very encouraging.
So if you can meet one person on the planet right now that you find fascinating, that might help you on your path in life, or that you would just like to meet and talk to, who would that be?
I really like Gary Vee.
Yeah.
He is a very interesting businessman, motivational speaker. And what I appreciate about him, I literally was just listening to him on a TikTok earlier, but he tells it like it is. And I don't think in business, in just in the world, I don't think we have enough of that. I don't think we have enough people who are willing to, not sugarcoat and say, hey, this is what you need to do in order to be successful. And I think that we are so focused on not hurting people's feelings. Like you should be nice, right? Like that's the American way. You should try to be as nice as possible. You should try to be as nice as you can. But at the end of the day, there's some people that are going to need to come to Jesus meeting. And I think that there's too many folks who are not willing to do that in order to make their team better. So I would love to have him kind of maybe give me a little bit more like management training because I think I tend to be that person that I try to hold people, I try to hold their feet to the fire, but a lot of times I worry about, okay, I got to be Midwest nice, right? Like that's that Midwestern in us. I need to be a little bit more East Coast. I need to be a little more, not mean, but I need to be a little more blunt, I think, and direct with people every once in a while.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. As a successful millennial, what's your philosophy on work-life balance? What gets you up every day? What motivates you to be the best professional, but to also nurture and take care of your soul? What is that for you?
I think a lot of it is my kids and my family and having flexibility and wanting flexibility. I think that's the big thing that we saw out of COVID, right? It's that, oh man, I really can do my job from home. I really can't go in only, 2, 3 days a week. And I'll tell you what, Joe, I actually was a remote employee even before the pandemic. I've been remote since about 2016. So for me, it's making sure that I provide that value and continue to be very high functioning and not really needing a manager so that I can prove that, hey, I am so dedicated to my role. I get stuff done so that if I say, hey, on a Friday, I want to go ahead and take my kids to the zoo, I can go ahead and do that because nobody's going to miss me, right? And my grandpa always had my papa, that's what you say in Greek. He always had this saying that I only work half days, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And so that's something that I try to instill in myself as well, that work ethic of, hey, I will be on basically for about, from when I get up until when I go to bed or when, I kind of retire in the evening. But I also kind of do one of those, hey, on the weekends, I do my best to be off. Or I say, hey, once a quarter, I'm going to spend a long weekend, phones off. If you really need me, send me a carrier pigeon so that I can try to, kind of have a little bit more of that work-life balance. But at the same time, I also realize that there are a lot of mediocre people that are out there and that are just fine with mediocrity, and I'm not okay with that.
Yeah.
And it sounds bad, but it's like, hey, I'm in to win.
Yeah.
That's the American spirit. That's the American lifestyle. Like we're in it to win it. Um, and it's something that I try to instill in my kids, but at the same time, I also have to be mindful of, hey, I was an overscheduled millennial as a kid, and I don't want that for my kids as well. So it's like this very odd balance that you have to kind of manage. But I think at the end of the day, it's worth it.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you ready to charge out into the world. You could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've chosen, the wisdom you've accumulated. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
Don't pay attention to the haters and hang out with people who are interested in being better than who they currently are. Like, don't hang out with mediocre people. Don't hang out with haters. And I think that's really tough to tell an 18-year-old because kids, at least I was always taught, like, oh, you got to be friends with everybody. You got to be friends with everybody. I don't think you need to be friends with everybody. You need to be friendly to everybody, but I really don't think you need to be friends with everyone.
Yeah.
And that sounds a little harsh and it sounds a little mean. And Christina P., comedian, very funny. She's married to Tom Segura. She has this bit on her Netflix special where she says, I don't want my kid hanging out with losers. Like, I don't want my kid hanging out with everybody. I don't want my kid playing with everyone. Like, he's got to hang out with winners, right?
Yeah.
And that might sound a little harsh, but ultimately, I think it's that like 15 to 19 is where if you start running with the wrong crowd, you're going to be in trouble. And
Yeah.
it might not be the kids that are, drinking or doing drugs. Like, obviously, stay away from those kids. But it's the ones that maybe are like, oh, I'm in college, but I'm going to party every weekend and I'm not going to take it seriously. Like, I really wish I wouldn't have hung around some of those folks. And I wish I would have found my people a little bit sooner. But
Yeah.
again, hindsight's always going to be
Yeah.
2020.
It certainly is. So let me ask you this. Let's say you walk up to a room of people that know you in a professional sense, clients, colleagues, everyone that you've worked with, and you walk up to that podium and you can tell them one fun story. Like your first concert you ever saw, best sporting event, jumping out of an airplane, a fun story that would humanize you in a different way. What would you tell that room of people?
I would tell them, so I went to see Coldplay in Chicago, Soldier Field. I think this was like summer of 2016, maybe fall of 2016. So it was still nice outside. And I don't think Soldier Field has a roof.
Yeah.
Indianapolis, Lucas Oil, we have a retractable roof.
Yeah.
So if it's cold out, you can still enjoy a concert. I
Yeah.
don't think Soldier Field has that.
Yeah.
And so it's been raining. I mean, Midwest, Chicago, you know
Yeah.
how it gets. It's been raining, it's been thundering, and we're right next to Lake Michigan, and there's lightning. And it's like, oh man, that's not safe. What are we going to do? We've paid all this money for these tickets. And I'm there with my boyfriend, who turns out to be my husband. And he said, hey, let's just stick it through. They're probably not going to have the opener come out. And, we've been waiting for like a year to see
Yeah.
Coldplay, one of our favorite bands. So Chris Martin, lead singer, comes on out and he says, hey, we're going to go through our set as much as possible, but they're telling us that we really should stop because of the weather and we don't want anyone to get hurt. Obviously, like lightning could, flash down. And I mean, it's pouring at this point. And he's like, so we're just going to go for it. And they play for about 45 minutes before they have to stop, which was amazing. But it was so wonderful that they realized, like, hey, we had people come from around the
Uh-huh.
planet to hear us sing, so we're going to keep going. And I think at that time they had just released the song Sky Full of Stars.
Yeah.
And the beat, when it drops, it goes dun, 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 dun. As they start playing the beat, lightning and thunder start going. You see over the Chicago skyline,
Wow.
it starts going to the beat of the song,
Wow.
which was insane. I wish I had a video, but I didn't want to get my phone wet.
Yeah.
It was just one of those moments where it was like all of, humankind is there. We're enjoying this together. And just like the joy on, however many people can fit in Soldier Field, it was just absolutely electric, pun
Wow.
intended. It
That's
was wonderful.
totally what a great story. I love Coldplay. I caught them and I love all their music.
Oh, yeah.
I caught them in '05 in Kansas City at an old amphitheater that we have, and it was awesome. Like, what was that? Speed of Sound, I think was the name of that album.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a rush of blood to the head. I think
Y-
is that one. Oh,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. And no, it was X and Y. It was after Rush of Blood.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
It was
gotcha.
the one with
Mhm.
the little like blue like Tetris DNA thing on it. But yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
They're great, and I've seen them now twice, both in Chicago. And it's one of those things where, at least I tell people with concerts, it's like there's some people that it's like, they're not that great in concert. Coldplay is worth every single.
Oh, yeah, every time I see like a live thing, it's crazy. I remember Fix You, that video when he came out and he started twirling that light and everything blew up and the whole I mean that their videos are always whoever they have that does their videos, it's always this wonderful story that they unfold. So it's great. Um, so let me ask you this. Everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Mm, I think that I am someone who is driven, dedicated. I talk about Filimoto, the love of honor, trying to do whatever I can to help someone, whether or not they can pay me back, right? Like I don't care. If you need something, I will do whatever I can to help you. But I'm also someone that has realized you burn me, we're done. And I think too many people throw around like therapy words, right? Like it's 2025, everybody's in therapy or has been in therapy. And I think therapy is a wonderful thing, especially for people who need it. But I also think that therapy can um, entitle people or empower them to continue bad behavior. And so I've been, as you can tell, read a lot. There's a lot of psychology books that are out there that talk about how sometimes when you have to take care of you, you have to set boundaries with people and tell them, hey, you're not going to talk to me like this. You're not going to treat me like this. And until you can change your behavior or, change, we can't have a relationship. We can't, continue to, maybe it's do business together. Maybe it's be friends. And that's a really tough thing to kind of learn. But ultimately, I think that is what separates people who are very high achieving, who want to be high achieving, who want to be healthy mentally, spiritually, physically, from people that are just kind of stuck in that phase of, oh, I just got to be a people pleaser. I got to be a people pleaser. And I would say I'm definitely a recovering people pleaser. But again, it goes back to, hey, I want to help you the best that I can,
Yeah.
or, listen. But at the end of the day, man, if you're an emotional vampire, I just can't do it anymore. And that's a tough lesson to learn in your 30s.
Oh yeah, for sure. So if anyone wants to reach out, they're curious, they want to know more, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yes, Gmail, Chloe Anagnos at gmail.com. I'm literally the only Chloe Anagnos in the world. Even in Greece, Anagnos is a not very popular last name. Find me on LinkedIn, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and Instagram. But always happy to point people to what I do professionally. You can also find us at americasfuture.org if you're interested in fellowships, professional development, events across the country, and you want to get plugged in. Always happy to help.
Absolutely. This has been wonderful, Chloe. Thank you so much for your story. That Coldplay story is one of the best ones I've heard. So
Oh, good. I'm glad.
this was wonderful. So thank you so much. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.